March 19, 1997. A helicopter climbs over the jungles of Borneo. Inside sits a geologist, the man who just months earlier announced the largest gold discovery in human history. A mine worth billions. A find so enormous it turned a bankrupt stockbroker into a paper billionaire and made ordinary school teachers and retirees rich overnight. 20 minutes into that flight, the man is gone, vanished from the sky, 800 feet down into a sea of green. 4 days later, searchers find a body in the jungle, or what the jungle has left of it. And within weeks, the world discovers the secret he carried with him. The richest gold mine on Earth held no gold at all, not one single ounce. In our last files, a fortune built on money that never existed and a miracle that never worked. This one is gold itself, the oldest, safest promise of wealth there is. Except this gold was sprinkled in by hand, in the dark, deep in the jungle, and almost no one saw it coming. Because everyone, the bankers, the pension funds, even the geologists, wanted it to be real. This is the story of Bre-X, the greatest mining fraud in history. And to understand how it ends with a body falling from the sky, you have to go back to a freezing basement in Calgary and a man with nothing left to lose. His name is David Walsh, a failed stockbroker. By the early 90s, he is broke, $15,000 in credit card debt, running a worthless penny stock shell called Bre-X out of his basement, the heating sometimes cut off. But Walsh has one last card to play. Years before, he'd met a geologist with a wild reputation, a man who swore the island of Borneo was hiding a fortune in gold. His name was John Felderhoff. So Walsh empties what's left of his accounts, flies halfway around the world, and buys a patch of worthless jungle beside a muddy river called Busang. To run the drilling, Felderhoff brings in a quiet, brilliant Filipino geologist named Michael de Guzman. Remember that name. He's the one who will fall from the sky, and in 1995, de Guzman's samples start coming back with something that stops everyone cold. Gold, then more gold, then numbers that don't seem possible. At first, the figures are almost believable. 3 million ounces of gold. Then the drilling continues, and the number starts to climb. 10 million ounces, 30, 47, then 70. And it keeps going until Bre-X is whispering a number that doesn't belong in the real world. 200 million ounces. That would make Busang the richest gold deposit ever found on planet Earth. $70 billion sitting under the jungle. The press calls it the new El Dorado. Analysts call it the find of the century. And the penny stock nobody from a Calgary basement becomes the most famous man in mining. On the market, Bre-X goes supernova. Shares that traded for pennies tear past $280 apiece, splitting again and again on the way up. A company worth nothing 2 years ago is suddenly worth $6 billion. And here's the thing about a story this good. Nobody wants to be the one who checks it. Because this isn't a crypto coin or a tech gamble. This is gold, the safest story money has ever told. So the believers come, and they come with everything. Imagine you're a school teacher in small-town Canada. Your neighbor just tripled his savings on Bre-X, so you remortgage the house and put it all in. Canada's biggest pension funds pour in hundreds of millions, the retirement money of teachers, of public workers. Whole towns go all in on a jungle they will never see. But a prize this big draws predators. In Indonesia, this is the reign of the dictator Suharto, and his family wants their cut. First, his daughter muscles in, then his son backs a rival. Then Suharto's own golfing partner steps in to broker the carve-up, while the government demands 40% of the richest mine on Earth. The world's largest miners start to circle, and the American giant Freeport-McMoran agrees to operate the mine. But first, Freeport wants to do one simple thing: drill its own hole and see the gold with its own eyes. And this is where it all should have collapsed years earlier. Because here is the strangest detail in the whole story. No one outside Bre-X had ever actually verified the gold. Why? Because the instant a drill core came out of the ground, Bre-X crushed it, ground the entire sample into powder before any independent lab could test it. They called it company procedure. It was the perfect cover, because the gold in those samples was never in the rock at all. Investigators believe Michael de Guzman and his crew were adding it themselves. At first, the story goes, by shaving flakes from his own gold wedding ring into the samples. Later, by buying cheap gold, panned from local rivers and stirring it into the crushed rock by hand. And there was a tell. River gold is rounded, worn smooth by the water. Gold born inside solid rock is sharp, jagged. Under a microscope, Busang's gold was smooth as a riverbed. A few veteran geologists noticed. They quietly said it looked wrong, and they were ignored, because by the time anyone could prove it, the evidence had already been ground to dust. For 2 years, the trick worked perfectly. And then Freeport's drill bit hit the ground. Freeport drills its own holes right beside Bre-X's, and the cores come back almost empty. Insignificant, barely a trace. There is no gold deposit. There never was. As the results spread, panic moves through the company, and Michael de Guzman, the man who ran the site, the man who knew exactly what was in those samples, is ordered to fly back to Busang to face the investigators. On March 19, 1997, he boards a helicopter over the Borneo jungle. 20 minutes later, he is gone. He fell, around 800 feet, into the canopy below. 4 days later, searchers find a body so destroyed by the jungle it can only be identified by dental records. Officially, it's ruled a suicide. A note is found, blaming illness. But here is what unsettles people to this day. De Guzman had 4 secret wives, a body almost impossible to confirm, and every reason on earth to disappear. Some are still convinced he is alive. And then comes the verdict the world has been dreading. An independent firm tests what's left of Busang and writes one devastating line: the deposit is a fraud, salted, worthless, a fantasy. The tampering, they say, is without precedent in the entire history of mining. Bre-X is finished. The stock that touched $280 is frozen, then crashes to nothing. $6 billion, gone in a single day. And here is the part that still makes people furious. No one ever went to prison for it. David Walsh, the broke promoter who became a paper billionaire, was never charged. He fled to the Bahamas and died a year later. John Felderhoff, the chief geologist who quietly sold $84 million of his own shares near the very top, was charged only with insider trading, and walked, acquitted on every count, insisting to his death that he knew nothing. And the one man who could have explained all of it was already at the bottom of the Borneo jungle. The teachers and the retirees got nothing. The disaster rewrote the rules of mining forever. They still call them the Bre-X rules. But the real question was never how they did it. It's how the smartest money in the world fell for gold that was never there. And the answer is the most human thing of all. They didn't fall for the gold, they fell for the story. Bre-X told them exactly what they were desperate to believe, that there was a fortune in the ground, and all they had to do was want it badly enough. The gold was a lie. The greed was real. I am Midas. This has been the Midas Files. Every fortune has a fall, and the most dangerous ones are the stories we want too badly to be true. If this one held you, the next case file is already waiting. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the vault.